In Venezuela, the upper phase of Plan Independence 200 continues with the installation of integral defense commandos. In Brazil, COP30 continues on its third day amid calls for social and climate justice in the Amazon. And in Palestine, civil defense teams recovered nearly 20 bodies buried under the rubble of the Sheikh Radwan clinic in Gaza. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. In Venezuela, the upper phase of Independence 200 plan continues with the installation of integral defense commandos. The operations took place in Apure State, Cogede State, and the Capital District. In this scenario, the Bolivarian National Armed Forces were deploying a civil-military popular union. These exercises aim to defend the country from foreign interference, as President Nicolás Maduro has repeatedly stated. The Plan Independence 200 has been deployed since early September under the concept of active and permanent defense resistance, and its upper phase seeks to optimize command, control, and communications within the framework of armed and unarmed forms of struggle for the comprehensive defense of the nation. And Colombian President Gustavo Petro ordered the suspension of intelligence sharing with U.S. security agencies in response to the bombing of ships in the Caribbean and the Pacific. On X, the Colombian president issued an order to all levels of security and military to suspend the transfer of intelligence communications to the United States. Petro emphasized that the decision will remain in effect as long as missile attacks against boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific continue. Furthermore, President Petro described the attacks as extrajudicial executions. According to reported figures, these actions have resulted in the sinking of 20 boats and the death of at least 76 people. Likewise, the United Kingdom suspended part of its intelligence sharing with the United States due to attacks in the Caribbean Sea. London expressed concern that Washington could use information from British intelligence. The United Kingdom, which controls several territories in the region, has helped the United States locate vessels suspected of transporting drugs. Therefore, this decision marks a significant break between the two countries. The candidates in Chile's presidential election ended their campaigns on Tuesday with 5 days to go before the ballots open. The presidential candidate for the governing Unity for Chile coalition, Janet Jara, closed her campaign with a rally in the historic Plaza de Maipú, attended by around 20,000 people. The flag bearer for 8 left-wing social democratic and progressive parties, plus the Christian Democrats, expressed her excitement about the rally in the square where Chile's independence was sealed. For his part, the far-right candidate José Antonio Cast was accompanied by about 10,000 people in downtown Santiago at the Movistar Arena, where the conservative representative reiterated his intention to establish an emergency government to address insecurity. And precisely on her final campaign speech, Chilean Communist Party candidate Janet Jara promised a government agenda focused on increasing public safety in neighborhoods without discrimination and hatred.
I want to express my heartfelt thanks for your presence at this historic moment, in which not only a presidential candidacy is at stake, but also a national project that looks toward the future, one very different from other projects that place hatred, fear, and hopelessness at their center. We do not want hatred. We do not want discrimination. We do not want the legitimate fear of many families of being mugged to be used as a political tool. I want to tell you something. In my government, there will be greater public safety in neighborhoods with a preventive approach.
And in Peru, the prosecutor's office reopened the preliminary investigation against former President Ollanta Humala for his alleged involvement in crimes during his service as a soldier in counterinsurgency operations. The first prosecutor's office, specializing in human rights and anti-terrorism, stated that the investigations will last for 8 months, during which time evidence will be searched for that justifies opening a criminal trial. This new investigation includes former military personnel Tobias Uaringa, Nicanor Guerra, Amilcar Gomez, and Rosal Vela, who are alleged to be responsible for torture, murder, and forced disappearance during the internal armed conflict from 1980 to 2000. The Guatemalan government has submitted 358 complaints of alleged corruption to the Public Prosecutor's Office since the beginning of 2024. 131 of these complaints are related to the administrative sector, 59 to health, 45 to infrastructure, 43 to security, 16 to labor, 14 to education and social development, and 131 with other sectors. In light of the alleged attempt by the Public Prosecutor's Office to cover up the case, the country's President Bernardo Arevalo reiterated that no case will be ignored or go unpunished. Arevalo explained that each complaint is rigorously reviewed and results in concrete measures that allow those responsible to be punished and new irregularities to be prevented. In Costa Rica, hundreds of people took to the streets to protest against the policies of President Rodrigo Chavez's government. The protest is taking place amid growing public outrage after Parliament refused to lift the president's immunity so he could be tried for corruption. Chavez faces charges of extortion by the prosecutor's office, a crime that carries a maximum sentence of 8 years in prison. However, a judicial proposal to remove his parliamentary immunity was rejected by legislators, generating severe criticism from civil society groups and opponents who called the act a blow to democracy. And protests continued in the Dominican Republic due to the massive power outage that left the entire country without electricity and paralyzed essential services. Public outrage was expressed by burning tires and blocking streets in various areas. The power failure severely affected hospitals, banks, small businesses, and thousands of homes, also causing traffic to grind to a halt on all roads and interrupting the water supply. According to the Minister of Energy and Mines, Joel Santo, the incident was caused by a failure that ended up affecting the entire system, creating a blackout, and confirmed that the national government is working to restore electricity service gradually. We now have our first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Wednesday, COP30 focuses its debates on progress in climate change negotiations. Issues of adaptation, finance, and the importance of health in the climate agenda are being addressed. From the city of Belém do Pará, more than 170 countries exchanged their views on the environment. However, challenges such as financing and the need to accelerate climate action persist. On Wednesday and Thursday, other issues related to health, employment, education, culture, and human rights will also be discussed. Also in Brazil, hundreds of vessels participated of a boat parade during the first day of the People's Summit, happening alongside COP30. For these, 5,000 people on 200 boats are sailing along the Amazon River basin as part of a symbolic mobilization that signifies a call for social and climate justice in the Amazon. The People's Summit brings together 20,000 participants from all continents who seek to pressure COP30 members to move forward with negotiations on actual solutions to the climate crisis. It comes in a context where many do not believe on promises made at conference underway in Belém do Pará, given the gathering's history of not taking sufficient action to tackle climate issues. The National Human Rights Council of Brazil demanded that the state declare a state of public calamity to address the widespread violence against indigenous peoples and the structural collapse of public policies aimed at them. Our colleague Ignacio Lemus with the story.
While all eyes are on the climate change conference negotiations, on the other side of Brazil, in Mato Grosso do Sul, a state on the border with Paraguay, the Guarani Kaiowá seem to strengthen their struggle. After reclaiming part of their territory in the Wiraruca indigenous land, the indigenous people were violently replaced by landowners and police.
There were 4 attacks, most of them involving riot police. They said they had orders, but most of them were illegal.
The ancestral territories that once were forests are now invaded by large extensions of soybean and corn monocultures. Together with sugarcane, these raw materials are used as livestock feed or for the production of biofuels. Indigenous people complain that the agrochemicals used in large-scale farming reach their villages, destroy their gardens, and poison their water.
Our minds are steadfast. We fight with tears in our eyes, shedding our tears in our land, and we always remain steadfast. We are asking for help. At least give us the piece of land so we can breathe the poisonous air better.
The energy transition to prevent global warming requires the replacement of fossil fuels, the main sources of gas emissions into the atmosphere. At COP30, agribusinesses is lobbying in favor of the production of so-called green fuels. For the Guarani Kaiowá, there is little that is green about a model that expels communities and feeds off the blood of indigenous communities.
We are not taking all of Brazil, just a piece to leave a space for our grandchildren. To leave it, to plant, to produce. To bring back the plants, to bring back the fruits, to plant for our children.
The National Human Rights Council of Brazil declared a state of systematic violations of the human rights of indigenous peoples and called for actions by the state. Recovering their land and planting crops is the desire of the Guarani Kaiowá. Still healing from the wounds of the latest violent attacks, they continue to replace soybeans with traditional, diverse and poison-free crops.
Ignacio Lemus y Pedro Viaba para teleSUR.
After the devastating impact of Hurricane Melissa, Cuba makes progress in restoring basic services in the eastern provinces of the country. The National Defense Council inspected the most affected areas and continues to monitor recovery efforts in the provinces of Holguín, Granma, Santiago de Cuba, and Guantánamo. In this regard, authorities specified that they continue to work on restoring power in Santiago de Cuba, the hardest hit province. The Minister of Energy and Mines reported the progressive reactivation over the next hours of all substations in Santiago in order to restore services. And in China, Taiwanese authorities ordered the evacuation of more than 8,300 people from coastal and mountainous areas in anticipation of the arrival of tropical storm caused by Typhoon Fon. According to the National Fire Agency, most of the evacuees are residents of the eastern county of Hualien due to recent flooding and overflow. In addition, authorities reported that the rainfall left at least 51 people injured who are receiving medical attention. Previously, Typhoon Fon hit the Philippines with the force of a super typhoon, causing flooding, landslines, power outages, and at least 27 deaths. Also in China, President Xi Jinping welcomed King Felipe VI of Spain to Beijing, who is on an official visit to the Asian giant. King Philip VI recalled that since the first visit by the Spanish crown in 1978, a solid bilateral relationship based on mutual trust has been forged. The Chinese leader recognized the Spanish royal house's contributions to developing relations between the two countries. He emphasized that together they have set an example of friendly coexistence and joint development between countries with different histories, cultures, and social systems. The monarch, who last visited the Asian country during the 2008 Olympic Games, stated that since then, China's advancement and progress has been very notable. We now have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. The final break, don't go away. Welcome back. In the United States, new messages posted by Democrats revealed that President Donald Trump spent hours at the home of deceased sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in the company of one of his victims. On Wednesday, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee published 3 new emails which revealed that Trump was aware of the sex trafficking network operated by Epstein. In one of the missives, Epstein confirmed Trump knew about the girls, and in another, he confessed to his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, that Trump had spent hours at his house in the company of one of the victims. The new information increases the public pressure on the White House to release the Epstein files containing the names of high-profile clients of the late convicted pedophile financier. Palestine civil defense teams managed to recover nearly 20 bodies that were buried under the rubble of Sheikh Radwan Clinic in Gaza City after the Israeli occupation forces exhumed the graves in their latest raid. The civil defense declared that most of the corpses remain unidentified, while it estimates that between 80 and 90 people remain buried under the clinic's grounds. Due to the genocide perpetrated by the Israeli army, residents have been forced to bury their family members in squares and streets. Amidst a climate of deep grief and consternation, search and rescue teams continue their efforts to recover and identify the remains of the deceased. And Palestinian authorities report more than 6,000 amputations in the Gaza Strip due to Israeli aggression. Health authorities reported that 25% of those affected are minors and 12.7% are women. They also warned that the lack of medical resources and support teams is increasing the suffering of amputated and injured people. They pointed out the urgent need for rehabilitation services and psychological and social support. In addition, the World Health Organization warned that more than 42,000 Palestinians suffer permanent injuries and require long periods of rehabilitation. In our news, in Egypt, polling stations in Giza Governorate began vote counting for the parliamentary elections. Under the supervision of commission chairpersons and electoral supervisors, employees began the process by opening the ballot boxes and destroying the seals before proceeding to count the votes. After 2 days of voting in several governorates, the count in the assigned areas continued without interruption. Other regions are still waiting for their electoral process to begin in the coming weeks. The objective of the elections for the House of Representatives is to allocate 568 seats through a combination of systems, individual candidacies, and party lists. Meanwhile, in Georgia, rescue and emergency teams continue the search for possible survivors after a Turkish military cargo plane crashed near the border with Azerbaijan. Turkish emergency teams are also working at the scene of the accident to secure the area and prevent further risks. The Turkish Ministry of Defense confirmed that the C-130 cargo plane was carrying 20 military personnel, of which 18 have already been recovered, all dead. The wreckage of the aircraft was scattered over a wide rural area near the village of Signagi. Although the official cause of the accident has not yet been announced, Turkey is expected to launch a thorough investigation to determine the circumstances.
There were 20 individuals on board. Crew members, 18 have been recovered and, sadly, have died. The search for the remaining continues. We have established an international investigation team, which includes Turkish colleagues who were at the scene through the night and have been actively involved in the investigation.
And in Austria, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside parliament to protest against a tribute to the Nazis. The action took place after the first far-right parliamentary president Walter Rosenkrantz organized an event to honor Franz Dinghofer, former vice-chancellor and member of the Nazi Party. Protesters displayed banners with slogans calling for remembrance of the past and the fight against extremism. Writers and historians who attended the demonstration pointed out that honoring such figures represents a historical and moral problem for the country, in reference to the crimes committed during World War II. French farmers demand that the national government not sign the free trade agreement between the European Union and Mercosur. Farmers expressed their rejection of the agreement as it would undermine their positions in the European market. In this regard, they propose incorporating an agricultural safeguard clause and measures to prevent the import of products that do not comply with the region's standards, including health and safety and environmental protection. Farmers mobilized after President Emmanuel Macron expressed optimism about the EU-Mercosur treaty actions that were described by the sector as betrayal and abandonment of the countryside. Well, at this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.